learning at your own pace, the Montessori Academy way. You're watching Newsmakers. I'm Lisa Oligas. In this edition, we learn about a new school open in Joplin called the Harmony Montessori Academy. It's an approach to learning based on the philosophy that children learn in different ways at different times. And it emphasizes independence, creativity, and hands-on learning. We talked to the owner of the new school, a parent and child experiencing Montessori learning, and later from our Lion Cub Academy director about strategies used there. Our first guest, the owner of Harmony Montessori Academy, Leah Gurley, a former Joplin school teacher working with students from preschool to 5th grade. Thanks, Leah, for being here.
Thank you.
And congratulations on your new business.
Thank you so much.
So let's begin with you, and you've opened Harmony Montessori Academy. Now, where did you first experience this type of education? And it was with your own children, right?
Absolutely. So I have two older boys, a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old. And when we were going to school in Kansas City, we had to find childcare for them. And right down the road was this Montessori school. And so when we took them there and we had a tour, we realized it was so much that we did at home, you know, trying to get them to clean up after themselves and trying to have them dress themselves and just care for plants and the animals at home. And it was just so much of what we already did that I wanted to take them there. That was our first real introduction into Montessori.
Okay, so give us a little bit of background. There's more than 7,000 certified Montessori schools worldwide, several thousand here in the United States. So tell us, who was Maria Montessori, Dr. Maria Montessori, and how was this strategy developed?
So Maria Montessori, she was an Italian physicist. So she originally started out as that, and then she established her own school really to help the kids who were the more poorer neighborhoods and to be able to give them access to an education. And she wanted to make these materials that they could be easily replicated at home. And so that's where the practical life area of Montessori came into play, being able to clean up after yourself and to wash your dishes and washing your own clothes, and caring for yourself in the environment. And so that's where it started, but she took her educational background and she molded it into something more geared towards concrete education, like maths and sciences and culture and language development.
So how do you feel it impacted your sons even as learners and as good sort of citizens of school? Because it does encourage them to sort of learn on their own too. Right?
Absolutely. A lot of times whenever we see education, it's that the external motivation, and that it's a really big problem today, because I feel like whenever I started my children in on this, they got that intrinsic motivation. That way they were proud of themselves for doing the work that they did. And I see that now as they're very driven individuals, and with their grades and their academics and their behavior being above average, I feel like it's because they have that intrinsic motivation. It's definitely not something that they got from me, but they do so well, and it's because they want to do well. They want to succeed for themselves because it makes them feel good.
So you were already involved in public education. Why make this switch to running your own school?
Oh, you would ask. I absolutely love working for Joplin. Joplin School District is always going to have a place in my heart because they're so kind to their teachers, and they truly do care about the education of our community. I wanted to add to that, and I truly do believe that Montessori will benefit our community, and that's why I wanted to make this switch. Now, if for some reason, I just couldn't live without my classroom, I would go back to Joplin in a heartbeat. But I know that this is going to benefit our community.
So your school is open, even
Yes.
it's for very young children. I mean, you start really young. How does this style of teaching and learning work with the different ages of students, because they're there all together?
Yes, so Montessori is about mixed ages, and the thing that I love most about it is from ages 3 to 6, we really do put them all into one room, because the older kids are role models and they do enjoy teaching the younger kids. And just as a a younger sibling might not want to listen to mom or dad, but they'll listen to the older sibling. That's kind of how it works. They love learning from each other. And with the younger kids, so Montessori method doesn't actually start until about 18 months. So the younger students, we do work on those milestones. Just like a typical child care center will focus on, making sure that the children are sitting and that they can feed themselves, or they can, making sure that they're walking, or those general milestones that we would typically look for. That's what we do as well. But we do want to make sure that they're getting those educational milestones as well.
For sure. So does this require a smaller teacher-student ratio? I mean, how many do you have on staff? What kind of enrollment can you have?
So typically, we have the same ratios for licensing that we would normally have. So under 2 years of age, it's 1 to 4 kids, and then 2 years it's 1 to 8, and then the 3 to 6 would be 1 to 10. But we find it a lot easier to have a smaller group, especially starting out. We're not going to introduce a whole lot of kids to Montessori because they don't know what it is and they don't know the expectations. Montessori is all about having freedom, but within limits. We set those hard limits for them because we've taught them the expectations, the procedures, the routines, and once they have those down, then it's a lot easier for the teacher, or the guide in this case, to take a step back and let them have that freedom. At the beginning, though, it's a lot more difficult to do that. And so we will have smaller class sizes in the beginning until these kids are acclimated to the environment.
Yeah. I mean, eventually somewhere in the world, somebody's going to tell them what to do. So does this also prepare them for that? I mean, and, because they have a freedom of choice to maybe take a different activity, but possibly in their future in the workplace, they might have to be told.
Absolutely.
So how does that transfer?
So many times you'll see a student want to go to one specific part of the centers, basically. So I would have, for example, my oldest son would go straight to the math area, and he would do that every single time because he didn't enjoy going to other areas. So what the guide would say, okay, we need to do one activity in the arts area, and then one activity in the cultures area, and then you're free to explore the maths area. And he would do that. And so that's one of those things that you give yourself the opportunity to learn something new, and then you go back to what you feel comfortable with.
So let's talk about, it's called ownership of learning. Tell us why that works so well.
So I feel like it really starts off with one of the very first lessons we teach a child is to put their work on a mat. And their work is always in their space, and that's that spatial recognition that they have. That's their area. And if you've ever met a child, they're not super great at sharing, and nor should they be, because as an adult, we're not really great at sharing either. But we are good at taking turns, and we're saying, this is my work right now, and I'm going to own my work because I have put it in my own space. And so whenever they're finished with that work, they pack it up, put it where it goes, and then they can move on to a different work. But they do own that space.
Yeah.
And as a guide or any teacher that walks into that room, we know I'm not going to disturb their learning because that's theirs.
So I read an article that says, they really can do percentages higher than other students when it comes to scoring on math, English. What do you see as the biggest benefits of Montessori education, and why these students might do better than others?
I do believe it's because of self-motivation. That intrinsic motivation, that will to learn, is the biggest thing that I have seen, unfortunately, decline over the years with public education. Not saying that it's all the students, but these kids who always get rewards for learning, once those rewards stop, they stop wanting to learn. And that's just an unfortunate part of the way that the education system has kind of shifted. And with Montessori, there are no rewards. The reward is your learning.
Excellent. All right. So there are some true academic and physical development lessons that come along with activities. We're going to have you show us some examples of that coming up next. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, Leah and a student, Nora, will demonstrate some of the hands-on learning that is so key to the Montessori way of learning. That's happening at Harmony Montessori Academy. Welcome back to Newsmakers, where we are learning about Harmony Montessori Academy. It's a school focused on fostering a child's curiosity through self-directed learning and materials that promote critical thinking and problem solving. Leah Hurley and Denora Castle, a student, are here and will demonstrate some educational lessons. So Leah, you've got a bead material activity here. What is the focus of this first exercise and the lessons that Denora can learn when she focuses on it?
So Nora, we are going to learn the small bead stair today. And the small bead stair teaches numbers 1 through 9 and a concrete representation of those beads. Would you like to learn this lesson? Will you stand next to Miss Camille?
Go.
Thank you.
This is 1. And this is 1. 1, and this is 1. This is 2. 1, 2. And this is 2. This is 3. You want to count with me, Nora? 1. Could you do it? Yes. This is 3. That's correct. And this is 3. This is 4. You want to count? Very nice. This is 4. And this is 4. This is This is 5. Yes. So this is 5, and this is 5.
So Leah, tell us, this is usually just guided. They just kind of demonstrate, the students kind of go along, don't necessarily have to say, you do this.
Yes, so typically in a Montessori lesson, it's a 3-period lesson. It's a my turn, your turn, and then a combined effort. So it's kind of the I do, you do, we do model in that we see in the elementary schools, but it's I do, you do, we do together. And we will present a material up to 3 times for a student to master. And once they've mastered it, they are able to work with that material on their own during their Montessori work time, which is between 1 hour to 2 hours during the day.
So typically, this would offer, they get to play with beads, they count the beads, they'll recognize numbers. What are some of the other lessons you would see from doing something like this, besides sharing?
Well, sharing, yes. The my turn, your turn is really helpful. But the number recognition, obviously, all the beads are colored the exact same through the Montessori materials. And so all the ones will always be red. And red is always the color of our 1's beads. All the 2's are always green. And not only is it a physical representation of the numbers, it also demonstrates that self-correction that I talked about earlier. As you can see on here, Miss Camille is putting the beads back in order, and if they're in the correct order, they make a triangle. And if they're in the incorrect order, the triangle will be skewed.
So the students would know that. They'd see something's wrong here.
They would know.
It doesn't fit right.
And
Good
so
job.
after Miss Camille's turn, it would be Nora's turn, and she would say the number.
Okay.
What's that number?
Can you tell me what it is, Nora?
She's
You don't have to
whispering.
whisper. What number was that?
That is one.
Yeah, 1 number. Well, you guys, thank you for sharing the demonstration and sharing so much about Harmony Montessori Academy. Don't go away. When we come back, we will chat with Nora's mom about why she chose Harmony Montessori Academy. Welcome back to Newsmakers, where we are talking about Harmony Montessori Academy, a new school utilizing the Montessori strategies that focus on child-directed learning. Joining our conversation with Leah Gurley is Hannah Castle, who has a student at the Harmony Academy. So welcome, Hannah.
Thank you.
So talk to us, tell us why you wanted to put your daughter, Nora, it's Denora,
Yes.
into the Montessori Academy.
I have 5 children, and Denora is my youngest of 5. My oldest is 16 and now has a driver's license. And so I'm not a brand new mom. Along with that, and all the lessons I've learned along the way, my husband's in the military, so we've had the opportunity to travel quite a lot. We've lived in 3 different countries outside the United States, and so we've watched the different educational models other people are using. And then, you know, we talk about culture shock when we think of going internationally, but actually you have this sort of reverse culture shock where you come back to the United States and you just see things in your own home differently. And one of the things I've noticed coming back after experiencing these different places is that we have a very fear-based education model. In fact, we have fear throughout our lives because we experience inadequacy and fears to our core. We have this rash of imposter syndrome. We think we're not enough. We think we're a disappointment to our families and society. And at the furthest reach of things, we think we're a disappointment to God. And then we pass those fears along to our children because, you know, if I'm honest, that's something I feel to my core. I'm afraid that, I have failed, or I'm a disappointment, or I'm not enough, or don't belong. Children aren't born with any fear, and they aren't born with any shame. The only fear a child has is being left alone or falling. Everything else is learned. And they learn it from us, and they learn it from their teachers, and they learn it from society. And when they learn to be afraid, they're less likely to innovate, they're less likely to love what they're doing, and they will self-sabotage, and they'll just be fearful about everything. And so as I've watched myself make mistakes, I've watched society make mistakes with my children. So now as I have Denora, I think to myself, wow, what would fearless education look like? And what would an education look like that will not shame my child, teach her fear, teach her shame? And then most of all, what is the evidence? What is evidence-based learning? What does that look like? And we have all these incredible models. If you look at the great psychologists, we have theories that we've had for 100 years and we're not applying them to education. So you have, like, there was a Swiss psychologist named Piaget, and he developed developmental milestones of learning for children. And his big idea was that children are not little adults, and so we shouldn't teach them as though they were little adults. We should, they have their own methods of learning. And so anything that's child-based learning comes from Piaget. And then you have Vygotsky, who was a Russian psychologist, and he said that there are these stages you go through, but actually, if you get really close to the next stage, but someone comes along and helps you, he calls that this zone of proximal development, where you wouldn't be able to reach the next stage by yourself. But if someone comes alongside you who is a little older, wiser, has more experience, they will be the one who boosts you to the next step.
You know, the old schoolhouses did have kids of all ages who worked together. So when you were in these foreign countries, you did experience Montessori education, or you saw it in action?
Yes, it wasn't certified Montessori Academy, but we lived in Germany for about 4 years, and my older children attended a forest kindergarten. And
it helped them?
Absolutely everything you would do inside, you did outside. The best is the first day I dropped my 3-year-old son off. It was his first day of preschool. I came back to pick him up. He was outside with a hacksaw attacking a stump. And I thought, and there were other children who had hammers and nails. They were hammering them in. When my daughter graduated from kindergarten, she was given a pocket knife. And the whole idea of that type of education is that you give children access to whatever interests them, and then you put boundaries on it so that they are safe, but that children actually have the capacity to learn far more than we are ever willing to
we
let
underestimate
them
them.
We absolutely underestimate our children.
So what do you think are the best benefits? Is it also, you know, it's confidence? Is it also emotional and behavioral practices that you like for this kind of learning?
Yes, I think one really special thing is the attachment, because we're all looking for community, we're all looking for attachment. And if they have the ability to feel safe and feel connected and feel loved, then they're not worried about failure. You know, and
you almost have to fail in life at some
you
point.
have to, but if you learn that failure is a bad thing, then you become afraid, and then you stop innovating, and that's so that's what's beautiful about the Montessori method, is the ability to be safe in your failures, be safe in your mistakes, and just try again without ever experiencing shame or doubt or fear.
Well, and honestly, it's more about self-correcting, because all of the Montessori materials have a self-correcting method to it. And so if they do it the incorrect way, they can see it. And they can see that it's wrong, and they can fix it themselves without somebody telling them they're wrong.
So it's problem solving on their own.
Yes.
So Leah, you mentioned to me that it allows flexibility for parents. In what ways? I mean, it is sort of a daycare environment, but it's learning at the same time, and you said it offers flexibility.
Yes. So a lot of things, like, you know, Montessori does work best with a 5 days a week schedule, but for some people that aren't comfortable with it yet, or their child is not comfortable with it yet, we do offer those part-time schedules. And as much as we can, educate and give them that value to education, and to show you that, you know, it's not such a scary place to be, then, you know, I think it's all a win.
It also recognizes there's a lot of learning that happens at home.
Absolutely.
And so you work in tandem. Thank you all for sharing so much about it.
Of course.
When we come back, we will talk to the director of the Lion Cub Academy about strategies at work at MSSU. You're watching Newsmakers, where today we are learning about the Montessori method of learning. The strategies offer students a lot of independence to learn and explore at even very young ages. We're joined by the director of the Lion Cub Academy on the MSSU campus, Nikki Tapana. Nikki, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
We often hear that young children are learning all the time with everything they do, including play. How important is hands-on learning, and what system do you use at Lion Cub Academy?
We do use Piaget's Project Construct, which is it was developed in Missouri. Project Construct was but we do a lot of constructing their own knowledge. We facilitate, give them items, give them the resources that they need, and then they create their own learning. Think about when you were little and you would go outside and you would find some dirt to dig in, and you would dig and you would maybe make a river or all different kinds of things. It's kind of the same thing. We naturally learn by doing.
How does it compare with the Montessori method and the idea of kids kind of getting to get in there and play and explore?
It's about the same. Really, Montessori and constructivism are right on the same page, because we want them to construct their own knowledge. Montessori wants them to learn through different materials. They give them the certain materials that they need, and then they show them how to use them, and then they use them independently. We do that. Plus, we also, you know, add in some different, like maybe fantasy items. I know that Montessori doesn't work a lot with fantasy, but we kind of do. We have a home living center. They wouldn't have a home living center. So it's different kinds of things like that, but we're very similar, just little tweaks here and there.
Why is it so important to not base it on, oh, you get scores and reward systems, and do we do stars still? That used to be, everybody gets a star. I mean.
Oh, well, if you think about it, when does that end? When do we finally say, I can do this without getting rewarded for it? So as long as we reward for things, then the rewards need to keep coming. But then if we do it intrinsically and we want to do it ourselves, then that's the reward that we get.
So the joy of learning.
The joy of learning.
So the approach is considered self-guided, but
Yes.
do children sometimes need to learn about things that wouldn't be their favorite thing to do?
Yes.
And how do we kind of make that happen?
Try to find different, like in kind of the realm, a lot of research shows that girls don't play with blocks that much. So how could we do something with our block center that would encourage girls to go there more? So it's looking at these different things of how we can rearrange our environment so that it would encourage them to use that.
And sometimes is it about the examples you do? I'm certainly not drawn to math, but it did help to take certain classes in it despite my struggles with math. So are there some things that we need to know? Can we work it into a curriculum in a fun way? Is that part of it?
Everything can be made into a fun way to do it. I mean, math, if you're doing an insect, if you're talking about insects, then you can bring in not real bugs, but pretend bugs, and maybe count the bugs and put them into different categories, group them different ways. I mean, there's always a way to make it where it's fun and interesting.
So if we know that Montessori is successful, Piaget is successful, why not have more of this in the public education system? Are there challenges to implementing programs like this?
I think there are some challenges, especially for public school, when you think about how many are in a classroom. That does make it a little bit more difficult. For us, we spend a lot of time getting to know our children one-on-one. So if you don't have the time to spend on that, and also they're given certain restrictions, like you need to have so much of a math knowledge, so much of a literacy, of the different things that they're required to do. It makes this a little bit more difficult for them.
Does it put more pressure on them, though, to reach deadlines like at a certain age when kids may just not grasp it at a certain age, but they might later and others might grasp it early? Does that make a difference in the approach?
In our approach, no, it doesn't, because we meet them where they're at and then we get them where they need to be. And I mean, basically that's what you need to do, is just take them where they're at and meet them where they need to be. I always tell everybody at my center, to push back the push down. We don't need to make our children ready for kindergarten. Kindergarten needs to be ready for us. And then you do first grade. In kindergarten, they need to be ready for first grade. Well, that just keeps pushing it down. When do we say that's enough?
Yeah.
Because they're 2, they're 3. They've been on the earth for just a few years, and we're already putting so much pressure on them.
And they actually learn quite a bit in those first 3 years.
Wow.
Because they're learning all their language skills and things like that.
In the first 5 years of life, you'll learn more than you will learn the rest of your entire life.
So that's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah. Well, Nikki, thank you for telling us about the Lion
No
Cub Academy,
problem.
what we're doing. All right, well, that wraps up this edition of Newsmakers. Thanks to our guest, and thank you for watching.